Welcome to the Introduction to Landscape Ecology with our workshop. This material was created by Jakub Nowosad and Maximilian Hesselbard for the YALI North America 2020 annual meeting. You can find links to the slides and the code and other materials in the description below the video. The workshop was divided into two parts. This video is about the second part of the workshop.
Slide to introduce you the basic idea of landscape metrics, but I'm sure you all know the idea, but I just wanted to include like one short slide so we're all on the same page. So the idea of landscape metrics is to quantify the composition and the configuration of a landscape. So basically to put a number on the spatial characteristics of the landscape. And we want to do this, for example, if we want to compare two landscapes to each other, or if we want to relate the characteristics of the landscape to, for example, some ecological processes. Landscape metrics are designed for discrete patches of different land cover classes. So if you think back at the first part of the practical, these metrics are designed for raster data with land cover classes. And just to give you like a short idea of what I mean by that. So for example, on the left-hand side, you can see some landscape we're interested in. And now we want to describe the spatial characteristic of this landscape. We first would need to translate that into a raster map. And then we can use the landscape metrics package to categorize this landscape. So a short introduction about the package itself. So the landscape metrics package is based on the raster package, and this has the big advantage that it is already included into these big spatial data types in R. The package allows, and we try to emphasize this, allows to calculate the landscape metrics in a transparent and, more importantly, reproducible workflow in the R environment. We try to allow to do this in like a tidy and a type stable data output of all metric functions. And what we mean by that is that the output of all metric functions will always be the same. And this has the huge advantage that it's quite easy to incorporate it into your code, and then just, for example, change the metrics you calculate, but don't change your whole script because the output will always be the same. Additionally to all these landscape metrics, we also include many what we call utility functions. So for example, we have functions for plotting the landscape or for sampling these landscapes within like a small subsample of the landscape. And you will see how to do this in the next few slides and also in the practical part on the exercise you will do later. And just again, a short overview. So you can calculate landscape metrics on 3 different levels. So for example, you can calculate a metric that describes the whole landscape here on the right-hand side. For example, but you can also just be interested in one class. So for example, in just all patches of the blue class, and you can also calculate landscape metrics just on the class level. And lastly, you could also calculate landscape metrics just on the patch level. So each patch will be described by one value. Okay, so how can you do that with the landscape metrics package? The first thing, as I said before, the package is based on the raster package. So the first thing you would need to do is to import the data as a raster. And as Jakub just showed in the first part, this is quite easy, for example, just by using the raster function. And then, for example, you could just import some example landscape. We then implemented in the landscape metrics the check the landscape function, and this is most likely the first function you should use from the landscape metrics package for each landscape you want to look at. And what the function does, it checks if the landscape basically fulfills all the basic requirements of the package. So for example, it checks if there is a coordinate reference system, it checks the units of this system, it then checks if the values are discrete classes, how many classes you have, and then in the end it will give you like a final if that raster is okay or not. In this case here, you see like a question mark, and the reason for this is that because it's just like a small toy example, the raster does not have a coordinate reference system, and because of that, we don't know what are the units of the raster. And the landscapemetrics package is based for units in meters. So it could be that this raster is in meter, it could be that it's not in meter, so we just don't know it, and this is the reason why we say it might be okay, it might not be okay, so you have to decide for yourself if you know the units of the package. If the package would become, if the landscape had been fine, there would be like a tick mark, and there could also be a cross, for example, if some of these tests do not fulfill the basic requirements of the package. So this is most of the time the first function you want to run on all landscapes that you want to analyze. In the next step, there is the called list LSM function, which stands for list landscape metrics. And this function allows you to list all of available metrics from the package. And you can see here the result is a table, so basically an advanced data frame. And you see that at the moment we have 132 different metrics. You can also see, if you look at the table, you can see the name of the metric in the first column, or the short name, so the abbreviation of the metric. You see like the whole name, you see the type of the metric, so all metrics are designed to describe a certain characteristic of the landscape. So for example, there are metrics that describe the area, some describe, for example, just the core area, some metrics describe the shape of the patches. So here you can see the type, and then lastly you can see the level. So first there are just some patch metrics, but there are also, as I said before, some class and some landscape metrics. And then lastly you can see the function name, how you could run these metrics. And I'm just going to talk about the function names in the next slide. With this function here, at the moment we just ran list LSM and did not put any options into these brackets. But for example, you could also type here list LSM, and then as an argument, you could, for example, say the level equals patch. And in this case, the function would just return you all patch metrics. And you can do the same for the type as well. So example, if you just want to have a look at all shape metrics, you could just write list LSM and then type equals shape metric. So here you can just have a quick overview over all metrics that we do provide with the package. Okay, so in the next step, how do we actually calculate the landscape metric once we have decided which ones we want? So to calculate just the single metric, this is quite easy, hopefully, with the package. And you can see here, if you just want to calculate the single metric, you basically just look at the function name and you just give it the landscape. And here just want to explain quickly how we named our functions. So all functions to calculate landscape metrics have the same name structure. So the name always starts with LSM, which stands for landscape metrics, underscore, and then this letter here describes the level. So there's a P for the patch level, there's a C for the class level, and then L for the landscape level. And then there's another underscore, and then there's the abbreviation of the metric itself. So in this case, it would be the patch area, because we are on the patch level and we choose the area. And if we now look at the result of that, we see it's again a table, and this table now looks always the same. So you can combine different metrics, and you always know how the result will look. So it's quite easy to use that for further analysis. So the structure of that table is basically that the first column is the layer of the landscape. So you could also not just provide one raster layer, but for example also a raster stack. So you could have like different layers, and then this would like count from 1 to the n layers. The second column is always the level of the metric, and in this case it's the patch level, because we said calculate the patch area. The next column is the class. So in this case, the first two patches all belong to the class 1. And then we have the patch ID. So here, all patches in the landscape have a unique ID. So we have like patch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until n patches. We then have a column that says you which metric you calculated. And then lastly, we have the result. So for example, in this case, the first patch would be 0.001 hectare, and the second one would be, for example, 0.005. Okay, so this is how you would calculate just one metric. If you want to calculate a few metrics, there are several ways how to do that. And as I just said, because the output table is always the same, it's quite easy to combine it. So for example, here we first calculate the mean class area. So again, we have the LSM, which stands for landscape metric. We then have the C, which now says that we want a class level metric. And then we have the abbreviation of the metric itself. So in this case, we want the mean area. And we could, for example, just type the result of that into an object. And then we could also, in the second step, calculate, for example, the total area of the landscape. So now we want, again, LSM for landscape metrics. We now want on the landscape level, so we have an L here, and we want the total area. We could also save that into an object. And now, because both tables look exactly the same, it's quite easy, for example, just to combine them by using the bind house command. And you can now see here in the result table that we now combine the three classes. So in the toy example, we have three classes, and we have the mean area of each class, which you can see here. And we have also on the landscape level in the last row the total area. And as you can see now, so now some columns might not be available. So for example, on landscape level, it does not make sense to have a class ID or a patch ID. So this is automatically set to NA. And also on the class level, we don't have a patch ID because we look at the whole class. So again, this is automatically set to NA. But this allows to combine metrics from the patch area, the class area, and the landscape, not area from the patch level, the class level, and the landscape level into one big result table. And why is this cool that you like combine all of these different things into the same table all the time? So one example would be that it's now quite easy to integrate these functions, these landscape metric functions, into a larger workflow. And here just came up with like a very stupid example, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to incorporate that into like a larger workflow. In this example, I'm using a pipe, and I'm not sure if you know what a pipe is, but if you look at the end of each line, there is this weird looking operator, and this is called the pipe operator. And what this does is it just takes the result from one function and flushes it down the pipe directly into the next function. So this makes it quite easy to read code in a logical order, and it just like closes the result from the first function and passes that on to the next function. So in this example, for example, here I first sample values from like 1 to 3, which could be our 3 land cover classes. I then pass the result of this and create with the results from this a matrix, and then convert this matrix to now a raster. And now we would have like an simulated example landscape. I then, for example, directly could calculate the distance to the nearest neighbor for each patch of the same class by using this function here. And then I could take the result of this, which is now, because we know it is a table and it looks the same as I just explained before. And we can now, for example, now use the result and pipe that directly, for example, into the filter function, and just filter all patches for which the value is smaller than the quantiles or larger than the quantiles of all values. Then, for example, we could group this by class and just count like how often for each class the value is within like the smallest or the highest 25% of all patches. And we can see here now we have a slightly different table, of course, but we see, for example, that Class 1 had 150 patches that were within the quantiles of the smallest and the largest value of the overall landscape. So here you can just see how easy it is to incorporate the landscapemetrics package into larger workflows. And of course, this is just a very stupid example, but I'm sure you have some analysis where you have like some pre-processing of the data. You then want to calculate these metrics, and you then want to use the results for a statistical model or just to create the result plot. And you can all do this now in the same R environment, which is great, I think. Okay, so there's even another way how to calculate multiple metrics. So I showed you a few slides before how you like can combine them into one data frame, use the bind house command, but we also provide a function for that. So for example, there's the calculate LSM function, and this function now allows us to quite easily calculate a few metrics at the same time. And for example, in this example here, we have again the tie example, and we just need to provide the tie example again as the import. And for example, in this here, we now specify, okay, we want all metrics that are on the landscape level, but we just want all, for example, diversity metrics. So by then specifying within the calculate LSM function, like for just the landscape prevalence and diversity metric, the package will automatically just return those metrics. And you can see now the result is again a table. It looks the same, and we have nine rows. So you know that there are 9 diversity metrics, and you can just see here the results for each metric. So for example, we have here's the patch richness, which is just the number of different classes, and this equals 3. So this function can be used quite easy to calculate a few different metrics, and it's quite easy to specify them by just combining the level, the type, or the name of the metrics. You can also see in this example here that I said classes max equals 5. So a few of these metrics have some further arguments that you can or want to specify. And you can also just give this calculate LSM function these arguments. So for example, in this example here, it could be that we know that there are 5 classes in the landscape, in the overall landscape. So for example, we can say, okay, we know there should be 5 classes, and then you can see here in the last row, it's the relative patchness, which is the number of patches that are in the landscape in relation to the overall amount. So in this case, 5. So here you can also see that you can just like specify some arguments for some of the metrics. So in the next part, I want to introduce you to some of the utility functions that we also introduce in the package, because sometimes it just helps if we have some utility functions that work together with the package. And the first one are all related to plotting the landscape or to visualizing it. And for example, all of these functions again have the same time structure. So they should all start with like the show underscore and then whatever they actually do. So the most basic one, but maybe one of the most important ones, is the show patches function. And what this does, it just plots you all patches. So a patch is characterized by all cells of the same cover class that are located next to each other. And this function just helps you to get an idea of the overall spatial structure of the patches. And you can like just look at, for example, one class. So for example, here we just say, look at class 42. But for example, you could also look at all classes at the same time, or all classes as panels. And it's just for like large landscapes, this can get quite messy. So you have to play around and a little bit like how much you can actually see, because at some point ggplot will have problems to actually plot the data. But this is a good function to get a first idea about how the patches are in space. There are a few more functions that you can use to get kind of visualization of the landscape. So one, for example, is show course, and again it's the same structure as before. So again we have like show. We then have the underscore, and then we, for example, we could just plot all core areas. So again, you can see we just want class 42 in this example, because if you use all classes. In this example here, there are like about 20 classes. It just gets way too messy. And now you can see that like all patches of this class, the core is in orange, the edge is like in the dark gray, and all of the bright gray scales are patches of a different class. So now you can see just the core area of all patches of class 42. And this might be a function if you just want to look at the core area, just get an idea about the core area. The next visualization function is called show LSM, which now stands for show landscape metrics. And what this function does, it sets the color scale for each patch corresponding to the result of the patch level metric. It's not as complicated as I'm trying to explain it at the moment. So the idea is that, for example, here we have this what argument, and we say what equals the LSMP area. So we just want the patch area of class 42. And what the function now does is the color of the patch now corresponds to the size of the patch. So you can see that this patch here is quite large. So it's in hello. We also have like some larger patches here, and then like the blue color scales correspond to smaller patches. So this function can help you just to identify, for example, where is the largest patch in the landscape, and you can exchange the what argument for basically every patch level metric. Okay, so these were the visualization functions. And then also we have some functions where you can sample metrics. So the idea is now that you can sample some metrics in a sub area, so on a sample plot or in a buffer area around some sample points. The sample points can be just a matrix of coordinates, it can be a sample line, or it can be a polygon as an SP object already. Just as before, as with the list LSM or the calculate LSM function, you can specify exactly the same which metrics you want to sample. And yeah, here's just a visualization of what I mean by that. So in this example here, for example, we could have 3 sample points. So the black dots here are the coordinates of our sample locations. And we now just want to subsample the landscape metrics within like these black rectangles or squares around these points. And for this, we can simply use the sample LSM function, which you can see here, sample LSM, which stands for sample landscape metrics. Before that, in this example, we need to specify the coordinates of the sample point. And as I said before, this can be a matrix with just the coordinates. So here we first create the coordinates of the sample points, and we then just need to provide them as the y argument to the sample LSM function. We then also need to specify the size of the sample plots. So in this example, the side length of the square would be 1000 meters, and then we need to say, okay, what metric do we actually want to calculate? And you can now see that the returning table looks slightly different than before. So the sample LSM function is not totally type stable because we include some more information. So you can see until the column here, until the value column, the table looks exactly the same as before for the single matrix. But now we have 2 more columns. So we have the blood ID column, which is the idea of the sample points. And you can see here again in the sample matrix that we had 3 different sample points. And then you also get some information about the percentage inside. And this value can be 100% if like the whole sample plot is within the landscape. But for example, if you have a sample point exactly at the edge of the overall landscape, some part of the buffer area could be not within the overall landscape. So for example, just 50% could be in the landscape. And in this case, this value here would say percentage inside equals 50%. So this is just a control for yourself to see if actually the whole sample plot was inside the overall landscape. So this is the sample LSM function. We also implemented a moving window function. So the idea of the moving window function is that you can show a gradient of variability within the landscape. for that, you need to use a matrix to specify the focus cell and the moving window. And I think I have, yeah, so here I have some visualization of what I mean by that. So what the moving window now does is it runs through the landscape, and for each focus cell, which is the black dot in the middle of that rectangle, a landscape matrix is calculated and assigned to the focus cell. So each focus cell in the result will correspond to the local environment around that focus cell. So it just gives you an idea about the variability within the landscape. And if you look at the result of that, it will be a raster object. And in this case, each cell now corresponds to the result of the what. Again, you can specify the what argument to select the different matrix. And now each cell will corresponds to the focal window around that cell for the selected matrix. So in this case, I selected the number of patches. And you can see here that down here in the center of the landscape, there seems to be a high value of patches. So we now go just slightly back. So you can see here, this area here, you can see there are quite a few small patches. And you can see that this shows up here in the moving window, because if you're in this area, you have plenty of patches just in that focal smaller subset of the area. Okay, so this is the moving window function. We have a few more. We have also a function where you can just extract values for a patch, or where you can spatialize some metrics. And if you look into the homepage, you can see there are a few totality functions more, but I just wanted to show you a few ones here because of the time. There are a few more how you can sample metrics, and you can just have a look at the homepage and see what's more. And the last topic I want to talk about are what we call the building blocks. So building blocks are basically some functions that we fail to implement to calculate these metrics. And we thought maybe it would be cool to also provide these building blocks in case you need to, or you want to come up with a new metric, or you just need a certain aspect of a metric. So you can just take these building blocks that we also use to create the landscape metrics, and just post them to create your own metrics. So what do I mean by that? So for example, one of the building blocks you can see on the right-hand side is the get adjacency function. And what the get adjacency function is, it just returns you a matrix where you can see the adjacencies of the cell. So here in the example, if you remember, we have 3 different cover classes. So we have 1, 2, 3 classes. And you can just see now the adjacencies between the different classes. So on the diagonal, you see whenever a cell of class 1 neighbors the same class, and so for class 2 and class 3, and you see how often does class 1, for example, neighbor class 2. And on this slide, I just wanted to show, for example, if you want to do the same with the raster package itself, of course, that is available in raster as well. But you need to do a bit more than just one function. So if you want to use the landscape matrix package to get the adjacency matrix, is just one function, get adjacency. If you want to do the same in the raster package, there might be a better solution, but that's just the one I could come up with. You need to do a little bit more. So you first need to get the adjacencies of all cells, and then you need to create these matrix by counting the adjacencies. So you can see it's the same result, you just had to do a little bit more of coding. And because we in the landscape metrics package use some C++ to calculate some of the stuff, I also made a quick benchmark down here. So many of us, so I just timed the function basically, and you can see that our function, the get adjacency, is quicker than the raster package by, yeah, it depends on if that's a lot or not. I know that depends on how many landscapes you want to calculate, but that can make a difference. So it is faster, and it also requires less RAM than the raster package function. And there are just a few more heading blocks as well, and they all start with get and then underscore what they actually do. So this here is get adjacencies, but for example, there's also get patches or get edge. And yeah, if you look at the package help and look at all get functions, you see all building blocks. Okay, so this is the landscape metrics package. If you have questions, want a new feature that is not implemented yet, or if you find a bug, and I'm sure there are still plenty left, you can just go to that homepage here to GitHub and then ask ecology / landscape metrics. And there's like an issue tab, and you can just like open a new issue and just ask a question or ask for a feature, and by that you make sure that we actually see it. Of course, you can also like send just a mail to one of us, and if you use the package in one of your papers, it might be nice to use the citation function. And we also wrote a paper about the package, and if you want more information about the package itself, you can also read the paper, which was published in Ecography, and there we also show how to use the package, some more of the functions, because here it was just a start. And with this, I think, Jakob, do you want to do the summary? Yes. I'm not sure where you. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so just to sum up what we try to show you today. So firstly, want to show you that R gives us that whole range of possibilities for working with spatial data, from reading this data, processing it, modeling and calculating things, and visualizing the results. And landscape metrics, this package is one of the examples of working with R for landscape ecology. And as Max told just a minute before, we really look forward to your ideas, to your bugs reports, to your suggestions, and so on. And of course, this is only a few hours workshop, and it's too short to show you everything. Like, possibilities are very vast, and there is a lot of things you can do with R and for spatial data and for landscape ecology. That's why we encourage you to look at the links we provide in this set of slides. Look at the videos, try the code, and try to adapt your ideas, try to adapt your data, and make it work for you, and learn by trying that. You can see how to contact us on Twitter. You can go to our websites.